Good afternoon. We will take up pressure instruments. One of the example of pressure instrument is the engine oil pressure. We have here and on figure 1013, this is an example of analog oil pressure gauge driven by a Bourdon tube. The most important instrument used by the pilot to perceive the health of an engine is the engine oil pressure gauge. Oil pressure is usually indicated in the PSI. As you can see on the face of the instrument, below there is a PSI for the indication. On this example, 0 to 75 or most oil pressure gauge, the normal indication is from 25 to 65 or 75 for normal operation. If it indicates 80 PSI, meaning there is a serious problem of your engine. There is a serious problem to be solved because that is too much PSI indication on the gauge. Okay, and the importance of this gauge is the one who will tell the pilot that the oil pressure lubricate and cool the bearing surfaces where parts are rotating or sliding past each other at high speeds. A loss of pressurized oil to these areas would rapidly cause excessive friction and over temperature conditions, leading to catastrophic engine failure. Now, for example, nag-start ta sa atong engine, so from maybe around 5 seconds or until 2 minutes, if the oil pressure gauge doesn't work, that's the time you have to turn off your engine. No, nigpaandar gani nimo og zero siya pirmi after 5 seconds or 20 seconds, wala ga siya indication, but pasabot wala siya oil pressure sud sa imuhang engine. So at that time nga walay oil pressure, why pressurized oil nga mo lubricate or mo cool sa imuhang engine. So maybe na ay leak or na ay problema ang imuhang engine. Okay, so kinahanglan nga ato siyang i-off. So we have also a oil pressure gauge on a digital for the large aircraft. We have here on the left side, we have here the oil pressure in between the yellow and the green. The indication is in the middle. Okay, so this one, the indication is in the middle, in the left side. Okay, this one, oil pressure in between the yellow and the green. So this is an example of oil pressure indication of a digital cockpit display panel. Okay, and next is the manifold pressure gauge. We have here the manifold pressure gauge. Okay, a manifold pressure gauge. Okay. An analog manifold pressure gauge indicator instrument, dial calibrated in inches of mercury. Okay, this one is an example of a manifold pressure gauge. This is the face of the instrument, and then it indicates that 15 inches mercury going to 28. That is for the normal range. Okay, green one means normal range, and once you reach in the red line, so it indicates caution or warning. Okay, so manifold pressure, what is the use? Indicates the pressure of the air in the engine's induction manifold. This is an indication of power being developed by the engine. The higher the pressure, the fuel-air mixture going into the engine, the more power it can produce. Okay? Kana siyang induction system, mao na siya agianan sa hangin going to the carburetor. So mao na siya mag-provide og air ana ang iyang agianan, mura siya og ang iyang tawag mo nag suction. So once the piston will go down, it will suck an air or vacuum an air. So that is the measurement of the manifold pressure. So indicates the absolute pressure in the intake manifold. So usually this indicator is only present on engines with carburetor, where fuel and air mixture prior to entering the cylinder through the intake manifold. Okay, so that is manifold pressure gauge. And then for the engine pressure ratio, we have here an analog type and a digital type. An engine pressure ratio. So unsa gani ang engine pressure ratio? That is used for the turbine engines that relates the power being developed by the engine. Compares the total exhaust pressure to the pressure of ram air at the inlet of the engine. Okay, engine pressure ratio or APR. So ratio between the total exhaust pressure to the pressure of ram air at the inlet of the engine. So with the adjustment of temperature, altitude, and other factors, that APR present indication of thrust being developed by the engine. So take note, this is only for turbine engine. So since APR gauge compares to pressure, it is a differential pressure gauge. Okay, thank you and good afternoon.